Well, I mean, there's obviously good cause to be concerned. We've only known about this variant for just under 2 weeks, but the evidence is that it is becoming the dominant strain in Southern Africa, in the region. It has a large number of mutated changes from previous variants. It's got about 30 in the spike, which is the key that the virus uses to get into cells. And given that there's a lot we don't know about it, so we don't know for sure how much disease it causes, how severe the disease is. We don't know the extent to which it can evade the vaccines, although it's certainly likely that it can, at least in part, evade the vaccines. For all those reasons, it's important to take precautions, and we will learn more quite rapidly. The challenge is to hold back.
Sorry,
go on.
No, I just wanted to say to you that, it was actually discovered by South African scientists doesn't mean that that's where it originated. But they have said that as far as they're concerned, it's only had very, very mild symptoms, the people that have suffered from this particular variant. Is that because it is a younger population in South Africa, or is it because we'll just have to wait and see the impact of this variant?
Well, it's likely to be both. So it is a younger population, and we know that younger populations get much milder disease. But we are going to have to wait and learn more. The question is, what happens in older people? To what extent can it evade the vaccination, and why it's so important for people to have the booster doses? So we have a lot to learn. But as I say, it makes sense to try and hold it back. As lots of people have said, it's going to be impossible to stop it spreading around the world if it is much more infectious than the Delta variant.
How long will it take us to find out more about it?
Well, we will need to see what happens when people become infected, not only here, but around the world. So we'll need to learn from experience in other countries. And we know that actually from getting an infection, it takes a couple of weeks for the sort of most severe manifestations to develop. So I'm afraid we do have to be a bit patient, but we will learn very fast. And of course, the other thing to say is that the vaccine developers, because of the amazing new technology that we have for the development of vaccines, are already preparing vaccines that should be able to boost and cope with the new variant. But that will take about 3 months to develop. And so there are lots of reasons for trying to, as it were, hold back the spread of the virus for as long as we possibly can, recognizing that we're not going to be able to do it forever.
Is this I was going to want to ask you that very point. Is this our new way of life now, that every time that scientists around the world discover a new variant, that we have to shut up shop until we discover whether the vaccinations can work against them?
Look, all pandemics eventually end, and they end essentially when the population around the world becomes largely immune. But we know with influenza, for example, that if we want to maintain immunity, that varies from year to year, then we need to have a booster vaccine every year. But at the moment, we are still in the pandemic itself, and the virus is still evolving. So sadly, the Omicron, it's lucky there are more letters in the Greek alphabet. It's not going to be the last of them, I don't think.
OK. And as far as the UK is concerned, did we close our borders quick enough as far as this South African variant is concerned? I mean, we are an island. We've seen what Australia's done. We've seen what New Zealand have done. And they basically shut up shop for a year or more. Have we been a little bit too lax with border control?
Well, we are a global transport hub. So, I mean, the reality is that we are in a hotspot for transport around the world, whereas Australia and New Zealand are, by virtue of their geography, more isolated. I think that you can't complain, given that this was only discovered 10 days ago or so, that action has been taken pretty quickly in the UK and indeed around the world. But the important thing that we can all do, and it's a sensible thing to do anyway, is firstly, it's absolutely essential to have the vaccination. So we've still got too many people in hospital. We've got a quarter of our intensive care beds occupied by people with coronavirus, of the intensive care beds that are occupied, and 3/4 of those people are not fully vaccinated. So, why are people taking that unnecessary risk at the moment? So people should get vaccinated. If they're symptomatic, they should stay at home and get tested. And we really have a duty to each other to protect people by wearing masks. And the issue
And
about
that,
hospitality
yeah,
is there
sure.
isn't a rule that's saying you shouldn't wear a mask.
Yeah.
You can and should wear a mask where it's appropriate.
In pubs and restaurants as well, because the government says no.
Well, look, if you are in a small, poorly ventilated, enclosed space, it makes sense to wear a mask. Clearly, when you are drinking and eating, it's not possible to do that. But if you're moving around, then absolutely.
Because I specifically put that to the minister, and he said that they felt that it wasn't necessary.
Well, look, we know that infection happens in closed places, indoors. And of course, as it gets colder, people are more likely to be indoors and they're less likely to have the windows open. So if you're going to wear masks in shops, it makes sense to wear them in other places as well. So, as I say, the question is what the legislation demands and what common sense suggests you should do.
What about people who they've already planned their Christmas holidays to go to Europe, go skiing, whatever, spend time with family? We can see that the cases are increasing there all the time. Should people stay at home, reconsider that?
Well, I mean, the point is that if you're traveling from place A to place B and the frequency of the disease is the same in both places, then you're not increasing your risk by doing that. So, I mean, the issue really is to avoid moving from countries where, for example, there's lots of Omicron to countries where there is a little. But as I say, if you're going from country A to B, where the level of cases is much the same, then essentially you're not increasing the risk either to yourself or to the people that you're visiting.
Would you travel overseas this Christmas, Sir Mark?
Well, I'm not planning to travel over Christmas. I am going on a trip to give a lecture in Canada shortly, and we'll do all the tests and be very careful.